Check it out, John. Back by popular demand. Check it out, John. Are they crazy? Once again.
Hello and welcome. I'm Lee Peterson. I'm host of the podcast WDcast, which is brought to you by WD Partners, and that's why it's called WDcast. And their tagline is innovation at scale, strategy, design, operations, which is huge in this era of trying to make stores fit customer needs, architecture and engineering as well. And that's WDpartners.com. Thank you, WD Partners, and thank you, Chris, in particular. Today, we have with us a special guest from the world of sporting goods retail, an expert in the physical customer experience realm. Full disclosure, I've known Toni for quite some time. She's in high demand, I will say that. So we have like 2 minutes with her. Kidding. Her name is Toni Roeller. She is the SVP of In-Store Environments and Visual Merchandising for Dick's Sporting Goods. Toni, how are you today?
Oh, Lee, I am really, really good. And I don't know if I'm in high demand or if I just haven't somehow managed my calendar, but I am excited to be here with you today. And it will definitely be more than 2 minutes because I think, as you mentioned, we go way back, which means the conversation is going to be super easy.
Why don't you give us a little history? Like, how'd you get to where you are at Dick's Sporting Goods?
Oh my goodness. It feels like that I'm going to give you some sort of history that's going to make me sound like I'm 108. But funny as it is, I actually started out working retail back in the day when I was 15, worked all the way through high school and through college. And as you may imagine, sometimes the retail bug just kind of bites you a little bit. And so right out of college, I went into management for Maurice's. And I was there for, I would say maybe 6 or 7 years. And they called me one day. And, they're based out of Duluth, Minnesota. And they were like, hey, would you ever consider coming to Duluth? And I was like, well, what do you mean exactly? And they were like, well, would you ever come to the home office? We're starting this visual merchandising program. This is a competency we've never really had. And we know it's a passion of yours. And would you ever consider doing it? And I said yes. I also remember talking to my mom and dad about it. My dad said to me, oh my gosh, I cannot believe you're going to Duluth, Minnesota. I was in the military and there's certainly base there, and Duluth, I mean, it's so cold. Do you really want to go? Because we used to threaten people. I'm like, no, I'm going. I'm so going. And so worked for Maurice's, which then that's how I got to Minnesota, which then took me down to Best Buy, which I think is where we originally crossed paths, and had an opportunity to work with Best Buy for about 11 years. From there, I went over and worked for Home Depot, probably about 4 years, and now here at Dick's Sporting Goods. And it's funny because when someone says, what's your resume? You always leave something out. But I also worked for Levi Strauss. When you think about a combination of hard goods and soft goods, I certainly have exposure to that. And that's what's brought me here to Dick's. And I just had a 7-year, the anniversary. Some days it feels like 7 weeks, and some days it feels much longer than that. But it certainly, it kind of feels like home, and we're doing some really fun things, which I think is what we're going to talk about today. But that gives you a little bit of background on me.
Yeah. And I hate nowadays, like people are saying like, no, that wasn't last year. That was like 4 years ago. And 7 years ago, when you joined Dick's, that would have been last week to me, maybe. You guys, meaning Dick's Sporting Goods, sprinted out of the gate for the last year or so, I would say. I'm sure like there was a lot of trepidation, like right in the beginning for everybody when anybody non-essential got closed. Everything that's happening now with the consumer, the way the consumer shops, the way they did like for the last 15, 16 months, my God. So what did you guys do to be so successful like during that period of time?
It's interesting because to your point, a lot of work, a lot of buildup had been going into how we thought of ourselves as an omni-channel retailer. I think one of the things I love most about Dick's Sporting Goods is, if you think about all of our banners, it's over 800 doors, but we also operate like we're a small retailer. We're very scrappy. And so, one of the things that I think that happened as we closed stores, as you mentioned, considered non-essential, we had to get really tenacious around making sure that our customers had what they needed. And so from that lens, really what we did, and seriously over a 48-hour period, which, thinking back, it's hard to imagine, but over the course of 48 hours, we figured out how to work with our stores around contactless curbside pickup. So we had already been doing BOPUS, which was, a great luxury to have, because essentially every store becomes a little bit of an inventory hub. But then having the opportunity to open up and do the curbside pickup for customers really allowed us to give them the product they needed immediately. As you know, it was a crazy, crazy time, not knowing if we would open back up, and then also not knowing exactly what it looked like in terms of being able to ship to folks. So being able to be part of the community and making sure that we were able to serve in a unique way is just a sweet spot for us. And so that was an immediate stand up over a 48-hour period. And now the next thing you know, it's just part of how we do business. We continue to have the curbside pickup and the BOPUS. We very quickly pivoted right after we started opening stores back up to dedicate space in our store to make sure it was still just as easy and just as quick in terms of curbside pickup. And so, I think we learned a lot. We learned as we went, but we also learned that it certainly kept us top of mind and top of heart for our customers during a really tough period.
What were those management meetings like? I know what they were like for us. I happened to be on vacation when California got closed down, and I was there. We were having calls every morning for California time to Eastern time. So it was like 6 o'clock in the morning. I was up in the dark, like taking a meeting, every day, like, what are we going to do here? And what are we going to do here? You guys have that same kind of thing for a while?
Well, I'm sure that we all went through those same learning curves and the learning pains. I think, interestingly enough, we did have a handful of stores in the U.S. where the state and or the community decided that we were essential. So we had just a handful that were still open. And I think, if you were to use an old tagline of health is wealth, they really viewed access to the products that we carried as essential. And so we were able to use those stores to help us understand how customers were responding. We used them candidly, just a little bit of as labs. We partnered with them. We partnered with our retail teams to understand how to do this really well and really quickly. So, we had a series of discussions. It's, how do you service the customer that's with you today? How do you service when we go to open back up? Because I will tell you, and this is one of the things I love about us, is we are perpetually optimistic. We felt like the day would come when we would be open back up and that we would be able to welcome folks back into our stores. And then we also continued to work on some really key projects that were already in our pipeline. We didn't shut down. We didn't stop that work. We said, you know what, we want to be ready when we open back up, and we want to be able to serve our athletes, which, I say athletes and customers interchangeably, but we wanted to be able to be ready with a lot of new concepts inside of our existing fleet, as well as standing up new concepts individually under new banners.
We're all talking about the pandemic silver lining, and that had to be one of them to kind of accelerate all those things. But I'm sure you were part of a retail plethora, really. We're figuring out buy online, pick up in store. Here it works, and we're learning stuff, and all of a sudden, boom, you're closed. You have to have it. So to kind of fireman that thing right away, that must have been a challenge as well.
Well, challenge, I think, is, I don't know, it's funny because it'll sound really cliche, but, you and I talked before about the tagline of your personal best. So yes, was it a fire drill? Absolutely. But it was also with a very laser focus of, here are the individuals that are going to be part of this discussion. Here are the individuals who are going to go stand it up. Here's how we're going to operate it. I mean, I think with any sort of unknown, you can get really, really focused really fast. I think, companies are large, and sometimes you have so many people at the table that, decision making can be challenging. And I will tell you, we do have the absolute luxury and privilege of having Ed, who simply said, you know what, This is how we are going to march forward. Here's how we're going to take care of our stores. Here's how we're going to take care of our people. Here's how we're going to take care of our customers. And, many discussions, many times he was the North Star. And we said, yes, absolutely. This is how we're going to get through this. And we have.
Kind of really need that North Star, like at any times like that, but especially times like that, I guess you could say. As you might imagine, I really want to talk about some of the new things that you guys are doing, and I'm sure you do too, which is really super exciting. Like, first of all, the House of Sports, which is getting a lot of press, which it deserves, described by the media as the first all-experience sporting goods store. I can't think of another one off the top of my head, like ever, so, and a true store of the future. So why don't you start talking about this House of Sports?
So for anyone out there that has seen our commercial, our launch commercial for our 2 locations, it takes you through the store and then it ends with 73 years in the making, which I absolutely love. It's a nod to how long Dick's Sporting Goods has been in business. A lot of the things that we've been thinking about in relationship to House of Sport does harken back to the original store in some sense. But the project itself was probably underway for about 2.5 years. I know that as part of that, we kicked it off with WD Partners, as you may remember, as certainly our lead strategy partner, our lead creative partner, and really helped us think about things in new and unique ways. And one of the things that I loved was, one of the working sessions, kind of a series of, what if questions. And I love that because it is a little bit more thought-provoking than simply saying, oh, you should go do this. So these what if scenarios, and we really landed on 4 key pillars for House of Sport that would be answering the questions of what if we had a location that had unique experiences for our athletes? What if we had a different service model? What if we had a different product offering? And what if we were the hub of the community? And so those 4 pillars of experience, service, community, and product is really, that's how we've looked at everything we've done in relationship to these doors. And we've migrated, interestingly enough, even on the front of the store, it does say Dick's House of Sport, because, sporting goods certainly has a relationship and a vernacular, but it talks about product. It does kind of like when you think about, okay, Dick's Sporting Goods, you think certain products. When you think House of Sport, I think it conjures up a different image in your mind. And so we started with that foundation and we said, what we're going to do is, in terms of experience, we're going to give our customers a reason to come in and actually try out the products. And so things like the batting cage, the hitting bays for golf, the way you can experience the climbing wall. That's actually, it's so hard because every time I walk the store, I give a tour, I always say, people will say, oh, what's your favorite spot? And I walk around and it's the same way that when you've got multiple children, you can't pick your favorite. So I have a tendency to always leave with, this is my favorite, which I love, that climbing wall. So the climbing wall is truly unique. We've got an integrated service experience where you can kind of come up to, for us, we think of it as our version of the Genius Bar, because you can see everything from a bike being built to a bike being repaired. I know that has a special spot in your heart, Lee, to having, a lacrosse stick restrung or having a glove broken in. And so being able to see that and experience it as part of, what's going on in the store. Oh, one of the other favorite spots in the store, and we'll talk about that a little more, is our destination. It's health and wellness. And then all of that experience is under the roof of 100,000 square feet, but then right outside the door, adjacent to the building, is a 17,000 square foot field. And that guy is in constant use. That's it's become part of how we operate and talk and work with our community. It is circled by a track, so you can certainly go out there and try product. You can run, you can kick a ball. It truly is experiential in terms of going and staying and hanging out. We've got 70 locations in the store where you can sit down because people get tired. I mean, you're covering a lot of ground and you're lingering and you're with a friend and they want to go see something that you don't. And so it's just a very interesting kind of hub of activity that we've launched. Our first one is in Victor, New York. It's been open now close to 90 days. And then our second one just opened down in Knoxville, Tennessee. It's coming up on a month being open. And, we're learning a ton out of these stores. And that's the exciting part is they are certainly experiential, but they're also acting as R&D hubs for us. That was super long-winded, and I know it. And you're probably thinking, oh my gosh, I hope this gal takes a breath. But it is a passion project, and I could talk about it forever. So you're going to have to interrupt me from here on in.
Did you talk about the field?
I did talk about the field. I talked about it just a little bit, but I'll talk about it a little bit more. Obviously, I don't need a ton of prompting. I love the field for a couple of reasons. First of all, the turf is all sustainable. It's made out of plastic bottles. It actually can be kind of roped off so that you can have multiple options going on across the field at any given time. It's something that we do programming. So we're doing everything from soccer classes, the yoga classes, the little league batting practice. We're also in the evenings having teams come in. They're able to leverage the field where they wouldn't possibly get other play time. In Knoxville, one of my favorite upcoming events that we're about to have is a week-long workshop for kids around Find Your Passion. Because we know that lots of times, kids, they like to try everything, but sometimes they don't really know like what sport is their sport of passion. They're going to be able to engage in every sport for a week. And then at the end of the week, we will have them choose their sport of passion. We'll have a graduation program for them. And it really is, it's a little bit of a give back to mom and dad. When they dabble in every single one of them, it can get expensive. And sometimes it's just a matter of like lining up what a child's truly passionate about. And so we'll be doing that. Those are just a few examples of what we're doing out there on the field.
My favorite commercial of your guys is the one with the Aerosmith song. I think it's get outside, right? I mean,
why am I not surprised by that? I'm not even remotely surprised that that's your favorite. You've got that passion for music. It clearly talks to you.
Yeah, I play it all the time for my kids. Drive them crazy. So
would you believe I actually forgot one thing?
What? Go ahead,
okay.
sure.
Yeah, it's a field. It's still about the field. It will convert to a hockey rink in the winter. I didn't know if you knew that. It's that piece I think is really exciting because we, opening up in Victor, opening up in Knoxville, we know that obviously there's going to be cold weather months, and we wanted to think about how could we give back to the community year round. Now, obviously, it's not covered, so we do have a challenge when it rains, but other than that, we've got the opportunity for use in warm as well as in cold. So I think that's going to be really cool. We're certainly going to learn a lot from that.
Well, but there just is none around here. The Blue Jackets are huge, so all this hockey started, but nobody really had arenas. I mean, some of the high schools did, Upper Arlington and a couple other ones, but to have a place to go and a place to practice, or even a place to skate with your friends or play pickup and stuff like that, that's huge. We always used to have like these types of stores, like a flagship store, an urban store, a suburban store. And we just merchandise them differently, but they were basically kind of the same stores. But now it seems like you guys have taken on this philosophy of different types of stores all together, like the new one that you either just opened or you have a few of, Going, Gone. Can you talk about that one a little bit? Like what's the difference? And are you thinking about that, like different types of stores all together for different areas?
Well, when we're thinking about this, I think really what we're looking at is what's a portfolio of banners means. So when you think about that, it really is about getting laser focused on who your customer is. And so with Dick's Sporting Goods, we've got a long history of knowing who that customer is and knowing that it's a combination of folks who are recreational, but also great enthusiasts. The two most recent ones opened under the banner of Going, Gone. And we actually are in the process of going back and re-looking at those original stores that we stood up. Once again, treating each one of those as a little bit of a learning lab that has gotten us all the way to the place of the branding of Going, Gone. Most recently just opened 2. And so that gives us an opportunity to talk to a customer that is looking for a value. And as you would imagine, that certainly is everything from overruns of product to product that we're able to just buy in bulk and offer at an advantageous price. It still is focused on sporting goods. It is very much focused on apparel and footwear, little bit of hard lines, but primarily the apparel and footwear is what you would find in a Going, Going, Gone. Our other banner, which I think you're familiar with, is Golf Galaxy. So
Yes.
while Dick's Sporting Goods has golf inside of our box, we do have the specialty chain of Golf Galaxy, which has not only an elevated and expanded assortment, but also elevated services. And then opening up here in the fall, we're excited that we're going to be introducing Public Lands, a banner for outdoor explorers. And that'll be opening in the fall, one in Cranberry and then one in the Columbus market. So you'll be able to visit it with great ease.
So the idea is I guess it's less about single sports, or a little bit about single sports, as much as it is about what people are looking for in terms of their lives. Like, can you pay less, or can you pay more, or do you want like a really broad assortment, or do you want a narrow assortment?
I think that's a great way of kind of summing it up, because in the big scheme of things, I used to work for a gentleman who would say, you design it and then the customer tells you if you're right. And I think, one of the things that we're super committed to, not surprising, is understanding our customers, how they shop, where they shop, when they shop, what's important to them. And there is a little bit of a once an athlete, always an athlete. If you think about the different life stages, there certainly is that crossover where maybe you have a sport that you love and enjoy, but there's other sports that you play. There's other opportunities in terms of how you think about staying fit or introducing members of your family. And so that really gives us the latitude to think holistically about sport. But then we want to make sure that at every turn, we are giving each one of our customer segments the right offering and the right service.
Is there any other cool concepts in the pipeline? Anything else you guys are thinking about?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think they're all cool, frankly, but I think probably one of the things that we're really looking at right now is, for Dick's Sporting Goods specifically, how do we continue to keep it fresh? So I mentioned earlier that House of Sport is an R&D location. And what we're doing is we've put a lot of different experiences in there. And what we're starting to do is understand, it's early days, but understanding what our customers are responding to, so that we'll be able to take that and infuse it back into the fleet. I'll give you a great example. As I mentioned, House of Sport, we had been working on that. It was in flight, certainly very, very far down the design path when we shut down for the pandemic. And what we were able to do is we saw that certainly our customer was looking for fitness in a different way. With the closing of gyms, fitness inside of the home became ever more important. And so one of the things that we did is we were able to take the design that we were going to use for House of Sport, and we pulled that out, from the larger discussion. We went and stood it up in a couple of stores, and then we were able to open 100 of those in key stores pre-holiday last year. I don't know how many folks were actually doing those sorts of launches pre-holiday, but we were happy we had the flexibility to do that. And then we're looking at continuing to expand and update our fitness departments in additional doors this year. Same thing with soccer. Soccer has become one of those sports that in many markets is a 365 sport. Continue to think about how does that show up. And so while I don't know that there's a specific concept that I can share with you or point toward, what I would say is that we are being really thoughtful about how we learn from these stores, being thoughtful about how we scale quickly, continuing to look at how we expand our vertical brands. We've got Kalia and then the DSG brand for men's, women's, and kids. And then just this past February, we launched Versed, which we're super excited about. If you have not had the opportunity to try on that product, I'm going to tell you, you're missing out. You're totally missing out, and we'll have to connect you with that.
Other than Dick's, who do you think is out there that's really killing it? And I don't mean competition or anything like that, but who's really doing it right? Airlines, restaurant, retail, who's really doing it right?
I think that's a really interesting question because, I think in some cases it certainly runs the gamut. I love what some of the small kind of what I would call specialty stores are doing. I'm a crazy advocate of Small Business Saturday. And I think that there is that nuance of being able to know exactly what product people
Yeah.
are coming in from, and the service. I just think in the big scheme of things, people who are doing it right have moved from transaction to relationship. And I think some folks do that better than others. And I think that is going to be the differentiator as we look toward the future, because there is that piece of convenience. But coming out of 2020, I think folks are absolutely hungry for experience. And I think they're really, really hungry for relationships.
Do you like the Rafa store, the Rafa, I think they call it a clubhouse, I believe.
I do. And then the reason I like it, I think it's a great example of it's about community. I mean, it's funny because I don't necessarily think of it as a store. I think of it as where people gather. And then the byproduct of it is you buy things.
Right. Yeah.
I continue to be just a massive fan of, if I were to go down more of a design, an aesthetic, a product, an experience. I'm a big fan of Anthropologie. I think they do it really well. I think they do it really thoughtfully. I think they do it in a way that makes you absolutely want to shop. But it's also like, it's surprise and delight. It's like every corner of the store has something unique. And yes, you can get it online, but I've got to tell you, it's like, it is a store that continues to draw me in. The people that they hire are wicked passionate about the product. And, you look at their portfolio, you look at everything from Anthropologie to Beholden to Terrain. Once again, they're finding that piece of like, okay, what is it that the customer's truly looking for? And they're appealing to each one of them through a specialty lens. Now, it probably doesn't hurt that they just opened up an Anthropologie home outlet near me. So once again, they too are thinking about hitting all the different needs of their customer base. And I think it's really, really, really smart.
Restoration Hardware is another one that's really done a great job with that as well, where, it's not only about the furniture itself, but it's about the experience in a store and what happens after that, then a restaurant and, cookware is probably soon to come and a few other things. You can easily live off a lifestyle brand for a long time to come. And then, like you're saying, you sort of become a part of that community for that brand, word of mouth and the whole 9 yards. Okay, so a global question, like what do we think is going to happen in 2022? How are we going to do?
In 2022, it's interesting because I think, I've heard the term that retail as a whole kind of looks like a K these days. So, if you picture a K in your head, there's those that are taking a meteoric kind of ride to the moon. And then there's those that will probably not prosper past. And so it's a very different way of thinking about what retail may look like. I think people are excited to shop again. I really do. I think, shopping has always been a little bit, whether you're buying or not, it's the act of shopping. It's the relationship of going with your family, going with friends. There's that experience and being able to get back and go out. I think brands that have, it certainly is, it's an overused word, but it's really kind of accurate. Those brands who have a frictionless experience across their channels. Because, it's funny, it's hard to predict the future. It's even harder to predict how people's minds are going to work, how their behaviors are going to change. And I think that attention spans are short, no matter what. And if you have an experience that is friction filled, or you have an experience where you're not top of mind or you're not convenient, depending on, what convenient means to you today could be not convenient tomorrow. If you haven't thought that through from a customer journey standpoint, I think it's going to make for a challenging 22. If you have thought it through, I think it's going to make for a really great 22.
We're also kind of in this area of uncharted water. Like, it was really interesting coming back to work even a couple of days a week, because you forget about all those little things, like putting on clothes, versus sweatpants and stuff like that. And driving through traffic and, And it's sort of traumatic in its own sense, not going to a store. And then suddenly it's like those things that you want to do anymore, you're sort of making decisions about all that stuff. So 22 is going to be kind of an interesting year for all of us, I think.
Well, it's funny too, because my mom is 84 and continues to pass out a lot of sage advice. And we've been talking about retail because she worked retail back in the day. And she's like, well, of course people are going to continue to shop because for a period of time they were told they couldn't.
Yeah.
And it's just human nature. It's no different than you were when you were a kid. It's like anything I told you not to do, you wanted to do all the more. And I was like, well, she's right on that note. And I think she's also right in terms of, things that we didn't get to experience in 2020. You're going to see the ramp up in 2021. And then from there, I think all predictions and bets are off, but I think it's going to be really interesting in the world of retail.
So softball for you, like what is your favorite sport?
I have to admit my favorite sport is hockey. Now, as you might imagine, I did not play it.
Expect that.
No, I did not. I did not play hockey, but I met my stepson when he was 12 and he was playing hockey. That's, in Minnesota. And so I just over the years became an avid hockey fan. It's one of the few games that I genuinely understand, which is big. I love nothing more than a live game. Yeah, I love hockey.
Yeah, I always watch like the Final Four of hockey every year. And every year I'm amazed at the brutality. Like the rules are such that you can come up behind a guy and knock him on his butt, which you can't do. Like in baseball, a guy slides in a second, they got to take him out of the game. I mean, so it's a very, very tough and very fast. And every goal you almost have to watch in slow motion to even understand how it got in there. Because there's 6 guys in there, and also female hockey is great too if you've ever watched it from the Olympic level.
So think about that. So you've got this weird combination of people that can move so quickly across ice, but then there is a side of it that is super aggressive. So it's this odd combination of, I don't know, that's a big juxtaposition when you look at these guys who are able, and gals, who are able to skate so quickly, move so quickly, but then also be super aggressive. It's an interesting juxtaposition.
Okay. And one last thing, like, what have you been doing for fun?
Well, let's see. I've been opening stores for fun, but I will tell you during the work from home piece, it's interesting because I do think everything has a silver lining. So there's probably not within a 5-mile radius of my home, there's probably not a piece of sidewalk that I haven't walked. I probably have actually been more active during work from home than I have been in years. It's about taking the time to actually, get outdoors when you've been inside. I started doing a lot of my calls because it's so easy to work from home. Now you're just, instead of sitting, you're sitting and you're attached to a computer screen. And so I found, taking calls over lunch and doing the walk and talk. And then, I have grown to know my neighbors in a way I never knew them. And so, weekends in my neighborhood are tremendously fun. We've got a ton of little kids. They all just kind of roam and we all watch over them as they roam from yard to yard. And it feels very, it feels very old school to live in that neighborhood where everyone watches everyone else's children. But it's, it has been a lot of fun in terms of, being able to experience that a little differently. And then I am that geek that thinks it's really fun to be opening stores back to back, being in the stores, traveling to new locations and getting to learn the community, and then getting to learn the store teams in a different way that I probably have in the past.
I gotta say, I'm so with you on that. Like, I don't think there's anything better than opening a store and you're watching the customers come in. There's a lot of them going to come in and you can talk to them. Do you like that part? It's your work live. It'd be awful to be an artist and have a painting on a wall because, half the people wouldn't like it. But if they're coming into a store, you're already a gimme, I think, at least at first.
Well, at first, and then that's the beauty of visual merchandising, because, that's really if I harken back to how I started, that's actually how I started. And that's something that you can change really quickly. You know,
Yeah.
I think I said it earlier, you design it and they tell you if it's right. And if it's right, it's flying out the door and there's new product flying in the back door. And so it's constantly rearranging, and love that part.
Thank you very much, Tony. Thanks for getting together with me. It's been a while. It's great to see you. You've been very gracious. It's much appreciated. You just made WDcast a lot better. And obviously, good luck to you and the rest of us for 21 and even 22. It's a little bit of uncharted territory, but certainly you seem to be in the right place for it and working for the right company. That's for sure. So people, be sure and listen to WDcast as we grill extremely interesting guests like Toni in order to extract some much needed brilliance, which I think we need across the board right now. And be sure and subscribe to this podcast, which is at wdpartners.com. Go to the podcast icon on the bottom of the page in the permanav. And again, remember, we've heard from CEOs, entrepreneurs, super creative people like Toni, artists, retailers, marketers, all really good learning. And one last bit of wisdom before we go, just remember the first rule of leadership is always your fault. All right, everybody, thank you. Take care.
Ladies and gentlemen.